In this video, I want to talk to you guys about the idea of retiring off of Nubank stock by 2030. Now, that would be an ambitious goal, but Nubank stock might be the first company to actually pull this off. Today, as of the time of recording this video, the stock is worth roughly $17 billion. But just remember, at the time that this stock actually listed to go on public markets, it actually listed for $40 billion as a total market cap. The largest investors in the world were all buying it at more than twice the value that it is today, like Sequoia Capital, SoftBank, Tiger Global, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and even the great Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. All of these extremely smart investors see very great hopes for this company going forward, and I do as well. So without further ado, let's break down the numbers. So to first understand how I got to all of these calculations, we first also have to know how the math gets done. So, the average person in the United States spends around $66,000 per year. Now, you may be over that, you may be under that, but this is just an average. Assuming a high 3% inflation rate till 2030, we can also assume that this number is going to rise to $81,000. I also want to bring up that the average retirement length is around 18 years of length, but we're actually going to shoot for 25 years of length to be even more conservative. And the inflation doesn't stop once we hit 2030, so we're going to assume that that $81,000 grows at a 2% compounded growth rate all the way for the next 25 years, meaning we're going to need around $2.7 million total to fund all of our expenses. And with an expected growth rate of 8%, which is what I comfortably believe we could get from the S&P 500 going forward, and this is without taxes, right? Because statewide or even countrywide, this changes for everyone. So you're going to have to do those numbers yourself. But I next want to change your attention to the retirement calculator, where I've changed the way we do this spreadsheet entirely. Going forward, you're actually going to be able to change all sorts of things. So if, for example, $81,000 is not enough for you, and maybe you're going to be spending $100,000 by 2030, it's going to completely change the equation. And so you might actually have to change the numbers yourself to something along these lines to make sure that we actually stay in the positive after 25 years. I have a graph here actually dictating all of the changes that you make, and on the graph so you can actually see the calculations of how things are changing. And, for example, the expenses. But this spreadsheet, which can also be changed to not just Nubank, but any stock on the entire stock market, and every other spreadsheet that I've made on my channel can be found if you're joining the membership down below, right beside the subscribe button. And if that isn't already clicked, make sure you do that as well. Anyway, jumping back into it, it's important to understand that we need $1,050,000 to actually fund the 25 years of retirement by 2030. I have broken down this next part into 4 different possible cases for Nubank stock, aside from simply bankruptcy, right? Any stock can go to zero, and it's important to understand that. But going forward, we are going to show everything from a low point, a high point, and then at the end, just for fun, a pure hope section that if everything goes right and more, and they even increase their guidance, that potentially we could see that by the end of the video. So jumping right into it, with Nubank at around $5 a share or $17 billion market cap, with an 18% compounded annual growth rate on our low side, we are looking at potentially a valuation of $65 billion or $18.68 by 2030. Half of this compounded annual growth rate, along with all of the other compounded annual growth rates, is assuming that the valuation will get where it was back whenever it actually IPO'd, and all of the largest investors in the world had actually started putting their money into it. But these numbers don't mean much if we don't know how many shares at $18.68 we will need to actually retire. So jumping over, this is what I've also created for you guys. Looking at, trying to get $1,050,000, we will need 56,205 shares, or roughly $280,000 to retire at this price at $4.97. Now, that is a lot of money needed, but that doesn't actually factor in our medium, high, or even pure hope case going forward. Next, looking at our medium case at a valuation of $125 billion by 2030, or a 28% compounded annual growth rate, we can see that this $4.97 stock will actually raise to a price of $35.81. I am definitely a believer that this is in the realm of Nubank's potential, and if they continue to grow in Latin America and potentially even in North America, we could start seeing some potential growth rates at this sort of valuation. But once again, how many shares are we going to need? Well, roughly about 29,300 shares at $35.81 means that we need about $145,000 today in order to net us, $1,050,000 to reach our retirement goals. Okay, for this next part, you better listen to me, because I don't want you putting all of your money into just this one stock on this hope that a very highly speculative idea that these high growth rates actually get hit. It will be very hard for these things to actually get accomplished, so be safe. I think a more comfortable idea is to find a lot of stocks that you actually like and actually invest a little bit into each of them. That's called diversification, and it'll save you your butt one time whenever one of these stocks actually goes under. But with that being said, let's jump into the high version here, where we can see 35% compounded annual growth rates, or a valuation of $191 billion. Okay, that would take this $5 stock over to $54.83. But you guys already know what I'm going to say next. How many shares? We're going to need 19,150 shares, or $95,174. Remember that this next part is highly speculative, but this is one of the most impressive companies that I have ever looked at. So jumping into it, what we can see is that the Pure Hope category covers a 50% compounded annual growth rate, or a valuation, surprisingly, of $444 billion, up to a share price of $127.38. So many things would need to go right for this to happen. The return on equity would need to stay high into the 40 and 50% like it is today. The growth of members needs to expand to multiple countries, and they really need to eat away at the legacy banks that are currently standing today. Is it impossible, however? No. And in fact, this would be a very much like a Tesla story, but for the financial services sector, where Nubank actually is able to tear away at the legacy banks and actually be valued higher than them because the growth rates are so high, versus a legacy company that is actually dying but has a large amount of assets under management. But how many shares and how much money? Well, we are looking at 8,243 shares were needed to retire, or nearly $41,000 in total if you're buying today at a price of $4.97. But to see why I think it could hit these growth rates, you're going to have to see my SoFi versus Nubank comparison video right over there. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching, and bye for now.